All right, Ralph,
Great.
we're
Thank you,
up and
Christine.
ready.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Looks to be a great turnout, and hopefully, we'll be able to provide you guys with some new and interesting knowledge for your environments. So, this session is called Transforming the Data Center Immersion. It's a presentation designed by Microsoft to help show some of the benefits and features of using Microsoft's data center technologies, including Windows Server, System Center, SQL Server, and Windows Azure. That essentially makes up kind of the core base for the Microsoft Data Center technology. For me, the transform part of this story is really introducing or discussing the cloud computing model. So you may have probably heard some people use the term cloud before, and you may have different ideas on what cloud means to you. To some people, they might say, well, I have virtualization, so therefore I have a cloud, or I'm using a service provided by somebody external to my company, like Office 365 or Windows Azure. Today, we're going to take a look at the cloud more as a model of computing, and through some live examples, we'll look to showcase how Microsoft has the best offering when it comes to cloud computing, whether it's hosted in the public arena or within your own data center. So let's take a look at this presentation first. We'll walk through these slides, which talk about Microsoft's offerings, and we'll follow that up with some examples showcasing this technology in a live lab environment. So the way they've broken this up is into multiple sections. Today we're going to be really focusing on the Envision section, which just really lays out the framework and talks about Microsoft's cloud model. Over the past few years, we've seen some transformational trends within IT, cloud computing being one of them, but we've seen some other items such as the consumerization of IT, large data, data explosion, and some new social and app patterns. All of these really focus around three components, being compute, storage, and network. All of those are really needed to get us up and running. So with the introduction of Windows Server 2012, Microsoft has referred to that as the cloud operating system. It's really the first operating system that's been designed with the cloud in mind, and Microsoft's really kind of designed things in a way that you're going to go ahead and design a cloud, whether it's within your own data center or utilizing, say, third-party services or something like Windows Azure. Regardless of where those resources are located, we're looking to use a cloud type model to provide those resources to our end users. So today we're going to be looking at how we can rethink how we design our data center to enable modern applications, provide insights on our data, and empower people-centric IT. So how do we transform the data center? Well, with that cloud model, there's certain characteristics that would really define the cloud by its model. And we'll look at some of these here, and there's a few more on the next slide. But it's beyond just the virtualization. Virtualization over the past 10 years has been a very big part of IT. It's been a beat that's been uh, spoken about many times, and many benefits have been seen from it. But we're looking to take that to the next level. So we have the ability to be scalable. We're utilizing those shared resources, which allows us to be elastic as well, responding to various needs in our environment. So as additional resources are needed, we can grow and expand as needed. We're looking to be always up, always on, and provide automation and self-service into that capability. Whether we're looking at the data center itself as an IT administrator or the models that we're looking to provide to our end users, many of us are used to the self-service and automated type models these days. You take a look at really any tablet or smartphone, users are used to, I want this app now. Let's go to the App Store or whatever delivery mechanism is available, press the button, and it immediately gets onto their device. We're looking to provide some of that same capability to our end users from IT, because what we do see is that if IT is not providing a good or the best experience to our end users, they're going to look elsewhere, and we don't want them to look elsewhere because honestly, that impacts our business. That could be detrimental overall to our company's future. So we want everybody using IT resources that we provide. We just need to be able to provide them in a way that they're going to be excited about and able to consume in a way that they're most familiar with. From the data center side, we are looking to provide insights on data. So being able to take data of any size, anywhere, um, utilizing modern applications, so regardless of the application or scale. And again, focusing on people-centric IT, so providing a personalized experience regardless of the device that they're on, and providing that in a secure and well-managed way. So what makes Microsoft's Cloud OS unique? Well, it's really the consistent platform. So whether it's coming from your own environment, spinning up, some servers would say Windows Hyper-V, System Center, SQL Server, or looking to a service provider that provides that technology, or utilizing Microsoft Windows Azure. It's all about a consistent platform of delivery. So regardless of where you actually deliver that content from, we have the same consistent platform to develop off of. So that's incredibly important moving forward. And we see Microsoft, even with some of the latest developments that have occurred over the past few weeks and months, really continuing down that path. There's a new utility which is not really part of this presentation. It's really newer since these slides were put together, but it's called the Windows Azure Pack, and it essentially allows you to utilize your internal resources with a Windows Azure style interface. So regardless of whether you're utilizing Windows Azure itself or providing those same type of features to your internal customers, being your business owners, it's the same consistent platform and consistent interface. So Microsoft is continuing to move down that path. Utilizing the Cloud OS, again, whether on the in-prem Windows Server 2012 platform or the Windows Azure platform, really allows us to design for the most modern and newest style of applications available. We see here the various products making up this architecture, along with Windows Server 2012 being Windows Azure, System Center 2012, SQL Server 2012, and Visual Studio as well. Looking at this information that's up right now, we see Microsoft has many different public cloud offerings. So from Office 365 to Bing, Dynamics Online, Xbox Live, MSN, Outlook.com, many different public cloud offerings that they've really been able to learn a lot from, managing millions of connections, millions of users, large amounts of data. They're able to bring that experience into the private cloud model as well. So one of the great benefits that we get as a consumer of the private cloud resources is the knowledge that's transferred over from these public cloud initiatives. And it really just continues, in a circular cycle from items that are learned on the in-prem up to the cloud as well. As far as the transforming of the data center, we had mentioned that the cloud does have some distinct capabilities. So instead of necessarily focusing on, well, the cloud is outsourcing. If I'm going to have a cloud, it's got to be hosted by somebody else. Here we're talking about the cloud on your terms. So whether that's something you host internally or something you pay for outside with a third party or Windows Azure, we're looking at the model. So are we looking at shared resources? Do we have always up, always on? Are we scalable and elastic? Are we able to include automation and self-service? If we're looking to meet the demands of today's business owners, they have very high demands and a lot of times very little patience for items to be completed. So we need to figure out how we can automate things, how we can put the control in their hands to say, all right, here you go, here's your resources, go to town. We're going to make sure everything's still automated in the background so it's still done the way we want it to be. And as things have been evolving, we have some slides here with some statistics. About 42% of organizations, according to an enterprise survey group study, mention that they are providing IT services in some type of private cloud. So whether that's having elasticity, self-service, automation, scalability, resiliency, or usage-based tracking, people are starting to move toward this. They are seeing the benefit of this. in terms of Windows Server 2012, we obviously get a lot of great benefits from the server virtualization side. Um, Server 2012 includes, and now with Server 2012 R2, obviously the latest and greatest version, comes with the Hyper-V hypervisor for server virtualization. Very great product, has a lot of great features, and from a licensing perspective, it's essentially free and comes with the Windows Server license. So compared to any of the competitors out there, I really haven't seen many features that have driven me towards any other solution. Microsoft's had a few iterations of Hyper-V to get to the point they're at right now, and I definitely feel that given the amount of time and investment that they've been able to put into things, it's almost like a tennis match back and forth between them and we'll just mention the other guys, VMware, in terms of feature sets. So it's usually, one coming out with one feature and the other one catching right up, and in a lot of cases, it's been Microsoft leading the way on the virtualization side. This technology, obviously, the Cloud OS enables us for this private cloud model we're looking for. And if you're looking towards the future, virtualization's not going anywhere. The cloud's not going anywhere. Many people might be concerned about, all right, I don't want my data necessarily going up to the cloud. My data is really critical to me, and I don't want to be worried about somebody else maybe housing that. Maybe it's there's some type of PCI compliance around that data, or it's just secure data that you'd really rather have in-house. Well, this type of model, we're able to provide all those same capabilities through an in-house solution. So, don't discount things if you're looking to say, well, I can't have things go outside of my organizational walls. We can keep everything inside, but still provide the same great capability. In terms of enabling modern apps, Microsoft really moved forward with a shared core. We've seen this with Windows 8, regardless of the device you're running on. We also see this across some of the other various platforms, whether it's server, Windows Phone 8, or some of the Windows embedded devices. Microsoft's trying really to keep the interfaces and the core very similar so that applications can be shared across various devices, and you're really developing a solution and not trying to develop solutions for multiple different devices. Again, we're seeing the same various components, allowing for these capabilities of a connected experience, rapid dynamic lifecycle, scalable and extensibility, and of course, being secure and reliable. People-centric IT, something very critical in today's environment. Again, we kind of mentioned that the whole methodology that people were kind of getting used to of pulling out their tablet or pulling out their smartphone and being able to download now, connect in now. Well, we still need to kind of manage all those additions as well, and we need to be able to provide users with that secure and managed solution. So we really should be able, knocking down the barriers of saying you have to be on this device or you have to be inside, our network. We want to be looking at any device anywhere, and that's the experience most users are getting used to and they come to expect. We see here another product which I have not mentioned yet, Windows Intune. Windows Intune is essentially Microsoft's solution for managing devices via a public cloud solution. So something like System Center, that would be something that you would run in-house. You would actually, develop and build out some Windows servers, physical or virtual, either is fine, but build out your infrastructure and actually build that in-house for your machines, generally inside the network or machines that are virtually part of the network, say through like a direct access type technology. Windows Intune is more seen for either smaller business in terms of management if you have not expanded to the point of needing something as large as System Center, or for our mobile devices, because Windows Intune lives essentially as a public-facing interface. It is very easy then for our public-facing devices to go ahead and connect to it. So stuff like phones, tablets, Windows RT devices, those are generally going to be connected to the internet more frequently than they will to our local LAN. So utilizing something like Windows Intune for those devices, Microsoft System Center for devices that are in the LAN or that can be managed through like a direct access technology, allows us really to manage any device anywhere. Let's take a look at the experience for IT. We will get into um, the various experiences that Microsoft has put together to showcase some of these technologies, and we have a fixed amount of time to walk through these. So we're essentially going to start with experience one and walk our way through as many of these as possible throughout our presentation time. We see here Microsoft's talking about the evolving data center, providing benefits to both the consumers and providers of resources, really looking at the infrastructure foundation as being many different possibilities, whether it's on-premise, using different virtualization platforms, a service provider that provides capabilities, or Windows Azure, all of that being brought up to the management layer, which is Microsoft System Center, to go ahead and deploy our various applications for consumers. So the first experience we're going to take a look at is Infrastructure Foundation, and there are two examples that go along with this. They essentially have broken things up to showcase some of the various features throughout the various technologies that we took a look at, whether it's System Center, some stuff that's focused directly on Hyper-V, some on Windows Server itself. So we'd like to just showcase some things that you may not have been aware of or may not noticed were available moving forward with the newest and latest operating systems. This presentation is built off of the Service Pack 1 editions. So there are actually some additional capabilities that have just been released a short time ago with the R2 releases. But I'm sure going through this on the Service Pack 1 should provide some interesting items to think about. So let's get started and take a look at Experience 1 for the Infrastructure Foundation. We'll take a look at the fabric required for our private cloud and some dynamic capabilities for our infrastructure. So story A for the flexible and resilient fabric, they've brought this into a few different scenarios. We're going to explore some existing configurations on a system. We're going to take a look at resilient storage. We're going to do a VM migration to a resilient infrastructure, and we're going to take a look at implementing a Hyper-V replica, which is a nice new DR strategy that Microsoft has available to us. So what I'm signed into right now is actually a server. If we bring this up, we can see just a little bit, possibly in the background, the remote connection. This is a server hosted by Microsoft. This session that we're doing today, I'm going to be the only one that has access to these slides and immersion experiences, but we're happy to look through these also at a later time. If you are excited with what you see here, you want to get more information, we're happy to go through these at a later time with you and really get deep into these experiences. But for now, we're just going to go through virtually, and I'll explain and walk through some of these for you. So we're starting with the flexible and resilient fabric, and we have some items listed here that will come up once we click in. So while transforming our data center, we obviously need a resilient infrastructure that can provide the resources necessary for our environment. So we want to make sure that we're not just reliant on a single server. We don't have single points of failure. We have clustered infrastructure, shared storage. These examples are going to talk us through with Windows Server 2012, utilizing our virtual machines and SQL databases on SMB storage. That we can actually make continuously available. They've broken this down into a story. We can take a look and see what they've got listed here, but really the fun parts are taking a look at the various technologies that are explained here. But they have a administrator listed here named Richard, mentioning that he's beginning to transform his data center from Server 2012 or to Server 2012, System Center 2012, and SQL 2012, but he doesn't have resiliency yet for his deployed virtual machines. So, theoretically his machines could go down, and having all those great features does not provide him much if his machines are offline. So we're going to look to go ahead and fix that. He's already gone ahead and created a continuous available file server, which is a new feature in 2012 to store his virtual machines. And we're going to use the technology that's called shared nothing live migration. which essentially means we can migrate a virtual machine from one host to another without requiring shared storage, which is a really cool new technology. In my mind, really state of the art. I had not seen it before until Microsoft came out with it, so we'll try taking a look at that as well. So walking through here, it is going to have us explore our existing configurations. At the current state, the hard drive that's associated with our virtual machine, which is going to be a virtual machine named Legacy App, is just running under an IDE controller 0 with a standard hard drive. That hard drive is going to be locally stored just on a single drive, the H drive of our local host. So we're going to go ahead and just take a look at that. So this interface is really nice because if we go ahead and open the Hyper-V Manager, it'll actually just push our instructions to the side, and we are still on a live server that we can go ahead and connect into. So let's, now that we've got Hyper-V Manager open, we're going to just go ahead and manage the Hyper-V host itself. So it has us connecting into host 2. And the Hyper-V Manager is a nice, built-in tool when using Hyper-V for managing, single hosts, or we can add multiple hosts to this view. We do have another product on top of that, Virtual Machine Manager. If you're familiar with the VMware ESX platform, that would be kind of comparable to the vSphere server that's used to manage multiple virtual machines and multiple hosts. But I wouldn't limit it at just the features that are available there. There's many more around our storage, around our networking, and around our ability to deploy dynamic templates essentially. So as opposed to deploying a single machine based off of a template, we may be deploying a service that includes multiple virtual machines with pre-configured roles, pre-configured setups. So there's a lot of great technology we can do there as well. But what we're looking at right now is just the plain Hyper-V Manager that's available for free, comes with the Windows Server when the Hyper-V role is installed, and we can go ahead and connect into our hosts. So we've reached into our host 02. It has us looking for a legacy app virtual machine, which I'm signed in with the 01 account. So we'll take a look at the 01. And it has us taking a look at the settings. And we just want to review the IDE controller. It's validating, hey, this virtual machine hard disk is just stored on the H drive. It is just a local drive to that host 02, and we're storing that VHDX file in this path. So we see here, because that virtual machine is running on local storage, our administrator Richard doesn't believe that it's going to have the resiliency to handle an outage, and he's probably right. So to ensure resiliency, Richard wants to move this machine to a more available and resilient infrastructure. We're going to utilize clustering and shared storage. So in our next scenario, we're going to explore how Windows Server provides storage resiliency for the virtualized environment. In this case, Richard has utilized a failover cluster, which is a built-in technology to Windows Server. Utilizes current hardware, and he didn't have to go out and necessarily purchase expensive storage. He's using some low-cost industry storage, and he's exposed the storage through a continuously available file share. So let's go ahead and open the failover cluster manager. And we like the Hyper-V environment. We are running kind of on a management box right now, so we need to actually connect into our different environments. So we're going to connect into a cluster. It has us connecting into VM cluster 01. And if we expand our cluster, we can take a look. Let's see, it's having us expand roles. And we're looking for a sales app virtual machine that's built in here as well. We're going to actually make our modifications on this sales app machine. So I've got Sales App 101 assigned to me. We'll take a look at the settings. We can actually go ahead and modify the virtual machine settings from this failover cluster manager. And if we take a look at ID controller 0, we can take a look at the hard drive, and we can see here it looks a little bit different. It's actually on host 02 virtual machine SMB. So it's on a file share. It's a SMB 3.0 file share that we're utilizing to actually store that VHDX file. So Richard now knows that the nodes on VM cluster 01, in this case, and any of these machines that he's configured are utilizing SMB storage to provide a shared platform, so we don't have a single disk failing or even a single server failing. We have clustered and resilient storage available to us. Um, and utilizing the built-in methods that are available within Server 2012, he was able to get redundancy, but also save costs and eliminate any need for additional hardware. So he's not bringing in any expensive storage at this point. We're able to essentially use servers in our environment to provide that storage capability. Next, we're going to take a look at ensuring high availability for a sales application. So to enable this, we're going to need to migrate that virtual machine to a cluster. The virtual machine right now is just running singularly off a single virtual machine host. So if that host were to have issues or were to fail, we'd run into problems. So we want to make that virtual machine highly available and get that on a cluster. So let's go ahead and close out of our failover cluster manager, and we're going to go ahead and open up Virtual Machine Manager. I had mentioned this application just a little while ago. It is part of the System Center suite, so it's not necessarily something that's directly included as part of the Hyper-V platform, but it's something you'd want to extend on top of that using Microsoft System Center. So let's go ahead and launch, and we'll connect. And it'll just take a moment for this to launch. All right, within the VM's workspace, we're going to expand all hosts, and we're going to take a look at our standalone host, which is host 02. And we're going to go ahead and look for our application. So let's sort by name. We're going to be looking for Legacy App 001. And we're going to go ahead and migrate this virtual machine. And because this is on, because of the way this is currently configured, we are going to result in a temporary loss of service, but this will be a short interruption. So bringing us into the Migrate Wizard, we want to go ahead and check this box to make this VM highly available. And we need to go ahead and select all hosts. We're currently only showing our standalone hosts. We want to actually look into our clustered hosts. So it has us moving over to host 04. So this host, along with host 03, was set up in a clustered configuration. We can utilize our new storage location, which is going to be on our UNC storage. Our networks can be left as default in this case, so we're just going to click next. But if we had different networks available or needed, we'd have to make sure those were configured on our cluster. And we'll go ahead and click move. And in this case, there is no shared storage. We are moving from a single virtual machine host over to a clustered host with new storage. So we're utilizing the shared nothing live migration. And because we're moving only the contents really off of memory, um, this migration should only take probably up to 5 minutes. I'm sorry, we're not moving. We are not moving. We are moving not only the contents of memory, but the actual virtual hard disk. I'm sorry, it's a little bit smaller over here to read. Um, so we are actually moving that hard disk, so it will take a little bit more time. But if we were using, the point that is trying to make is if we were using shared storage, the machine may be able to just stay on that shared storage at that time. So if we weren't looking to necessarily migrate it from one cluster to another, that machine would still reside on the same storage location. We would only at that time be transferring memory contents from one host to another, and that would be able to run much quicker. But this really shouldn't take too long. We can see that the job status window came up. If we click on the running job, we can see the various steps that have been performed and where we are in terms of the process. There is an error that's going to come up that will be expected. At this point, we can go ahead and close out of the VMM job status window in the console and look to move forward. So using shared nothing live migration, Richard has moved his sales app to a high available cluster with really no downtime. Um, we can now be confident that the application is going to be deployed on a system that's robust, scalable. We can add additional hosts to that cluster as needed, perform maintenance a lot easier on those hosts. So we've really set ourselves up to handle, higher level of failure by setting up these recovery services. So that will continue to run in the background. We don't need to sit and watch that. Finally, we're going to look at creating a Hyper-V replica. So this is really around DR and site failure. So if we have a complete site failure at one site and we have another location or even another server that we would like to replicate to, if we don't have another location, we can utilize that as well. So let's bring this Hyper-V Manager console back up. And we're going to need to connect into host 04. That was where we were migrating to. Let's see if we have to wait on that migration or if there's any virtual machines there that we could use in its place. All right, it does look like we are going to have to wait that time period. There are only some additional sales app machines and storage machines that have been moved or that are residing on this location right now. So let's go back to Virtual Machine Manager. We'll go ahead and be able to bring up that job, see where its status is, find out how much longer that's going to take. Hopefully that should just be a minute or two. If we take a look down to our jobs, we can get back into see the running job, which is the moving of Legacy App 01. And it's about 4 minutes in. Hopefully, it should just be a short while more. It's currently still deploying the file over um, a bits over HTTPS connection. All right, in the interest of time, let's see. Usually if you yell at things, they'll go a little bit faster, but I really don't feel like yelling at this console. See if we can take a look at another machine and just take a look at the options we maybe don't need to necessarily apply during this, just in an interest of time. So let's take a look at one of our machines here. And we have an option just by right-clicking on the machine to go ahead and enable replication. We would specify who we want to replicate to. So in this case, they're having to specify host 05. We're going to make our connection using Kerberos authentication and compress any data where possible over the network. Select our VHD that we'd like to replicate, how often we'd like to be able to recover from, or how many recovery points we'd like to be able to select, and how do we want to initially replicate. Do we want to send that over the network? Do we want to send a copy using external media? Do we, maybe want to, if we've got a very large hard drive, maybe we want to actually ship that over to that location and be able to bring that up locally before we try with any network-based replication. So if we were to go ahead and configure this, we would eventually view some replication health within our console, and we'd be able to see that our virtual machines are being pushed over to another location. That other location would still need compatible networking to be able to bring that machine online, but we had seen some great case studies with this with Hurricane Sandy, actually, where entire data centers were affected, and people had, or companies had a West Coast environment that they were easily able to spin up using these virtual machine replicas and get back to running in a short time frame. So really nice built-in technology, and as it mentions here, without purchasing any additional software, utilizing native 2012 features, we're ensuring that the application can continue to operate in the event of an unplanned failure. So that brings us through the configuration of our infrastructure. We will need to really take a look at our infrastructure from that base level to ensure that it can support all the various capabilities that we're looking to implement. As I mentioned, we don't want to go ahead and implement all these great technologies without a strong base to back them up. Moving on to the next item under infrastructure foundation is dynamic infrastructure, starting with the ability to expand a storage pool's capacity. So we're now running on flexible and resilient infrastructure. We got to ensure that we can handle the dynamic nature of our workloads. So with the shared infrastructure, many workloads are going to need different amounts of resources at different times. So to accommodate this, we can utilize Server 2012 and System Center to dynamically expand our underlying infrastructure and utilize QoS capabilities to prevent service interruption. So in this case, Richard and Sarani is the app owner. Let's see, or I believe these stories, as I mentioned, they're nice to have to give us some context, but I think Richard and Sarani actually work on the same team. They have built their underlying infrastructure to be highly available. They need to ensure that the infrastructure also supports the ability to be dynamic to handle our day-to-day variations. So we can see in this story, we're taking a look at Server 2012, System Center 2012, SQL 2012, and Windows Azure. Or Windows Azure is not mentioned in this story, but the first three we do see listed talking about their storage capabilities, virtualization, networking, VMM, and the ability to customize memory on a hot add basis. So let's dive right into some of these examples. So scenario one is to expand the storage pool capacity. In this case, Richard has noticed that the sales application database is running out of disk space or out of available disk when the volume was originally created. It was used this new technology in Server 2012 called storage spaces, which allows someone to take advantage of different sized disks and different disks that could be available to you. So Richard used storage spaces instead of purchasing the new SAN to store the database. And since he's using storage spaces, he can easily go ahead and expand the underlying pool without disrupting the application at all. So let's go through and walk through the examples I have for this scenario. They have us going into Server Manager, which, if you're not familiar with Server 2012, is a new addition. We have the ability to manage both our local server as well as remote servers from a single interface. So it's a nice kind of dashboard view of the various items within your environment. So using Server Manager, we're going to take a look at the All Servers view. And in this case, let's see, we're going to right-click on the All Servers node, and we're going to add servers. So we're going to add an additional server to our view, so we don't have to actually remotely connect into that server. We can manage it all from one management box. And they have us entering a sales app machine. So let's take a look for sales app 101. Let's click Find Now. And we're able to find that via its Active Directory connection and bring that right in. So it'll go ahead and try to discover information about Sales App 101. While that's discovering, we'll go ahead and take a look at the file and storage services. We'll take a look at our storage pools that have been created. And if we select Pool 1, it's asking us to scroll to the right to see the pool capacity. There really is nowhere for us to scroll. If our window is a little bit smaller, that would be needed, but in this case, just from our main view, we can see our capacity is 18.5 gigs. Our free space is 1.25. And our yellow bar is indicating that we are almost out of capacity, so we want to go ahead and add additional capacity to this pool. So we can go ahead and just simply right-click the pool, and we can add in a new physical disk to that pool. We have some new physical disks that are available. So it has us choosing both. We're going to go with an automatic allocation for our first, and our second we're going to mention as a hot spare. So similar to a redundant storage technology, we have the ability through storage pools to also indicate hot spares. So we can see now we just left the defaults. It actually just bumped our storage up. We can see that the pool has more space now, and we have a green bar. We have more space available within our storage pool. So that was very simple and easy. Utilizes the storage pool that's available. We're using back-end physical disks. For storage group, we have hot spare technology. So if one of these disks were to fail, our hot spare will automatically take over, and we've seen no downtime from our application. So now that we've addressed storage issues, they want us to ensure our network QoS, or quality of service. So Richard has got some complaints from some users that the core application is responding slowly during high volume times, but other servers that are hosted in the private cloud seem to be affected as well. So he's discovered that the core application is using a lot of the network resources, and we need to ensure that that application can be throttled so that other workloads are not impacted. So we're going to go ahead and apply QoS settings to protect our network. So in this case, they've got us going through some performance monitors. This is actually kind of neat. They've got a perfmon that's built into a web view, and there's some tutorials online that can provide you with how to do this. It might be useful for providing information to maybe people that don't necessarily have login rights to a server but want to see deeper information, maybe business owners or some people on your development or prod support side. So this is a pretty neat idea. So it has us opening Internet Explorer. We should just be able to get to this site. It doesn't look like there's anything left to wait for. And it's filled in our sales app, so we just need to fill that in with our server where we're working on 101. And we've actually got listed here essentially perfmon, viewable via Internet Explorer without logging into the box. And we see we have some counters that we can select as well, or that are selected. So we see our network adapter both from let's see, we have one network adapter and we're seeing bytes sent and bytes received as our counters that are available for us to take a look at. So on another tab, we're going to actually be browsing to the sales app. And we're going to go ahead and create a network load. Unfortunately, that is not disappearing on us, so we may need to be, there we go, a little creative moving things around. So it's having us simulate a network load on the Sales App 101 application. So if we go back to our perfmon page and we go to our Sales App 101 tab, we can see our network load is starting to increase. So let's go ahead and open our VMM console. It was already open for us. We'll go and take a look at our host. We've moved our machine over to a clustered host. Let's take a look at VM cluster 01. We're looking at Sales App 101. And it wants us to take a look at the properties of that machine. Within the properties, to edit the hardware, we're going to go ahead into the hardware configuration. We'll take a look at our network adapter. And within our virtual switch that we defined within VMM, I mentioned before we have some interesting networking and storage capabilities. We can actually define some classifications. So they have us switching this actually to a low bandwidth classification. And this will essentially change the way that virtual machine is working in terms of how much network throughput is available to it. And we already see immediately a drop off in the number of bytes sent from that device. So we're no longer pegging the network from that virtual machine. We are still giving it some capability to reach out, but it is no longer causing an issue in our environment. So we'll go ahead and turn off our network load process, and we should see it drop right off. So some really cool stuff there from both. I think the perfmon counter is actually really neat, seeing that in Internet Explorer outside of a machine. But also from VMM, again, it's not just a replacement for vSphere. There's many great technologies that are available there. We've gone ahead at this point and set a min and max threshold on network throughput. And by doing so, our resources can be more evenly distributed amongst our workloads and protect against, one particular system or one service from stealing all the bandwidth. Now that we protected our network, we want to ensure that our application can handle the dynamic memory requirements. So in this case, we're taking a look at SQL Server. And Richard has noticed that SQL Server on his core app is not performing transactions at an expected rate, so it's going a little bit too slow. Upon further investigation, Richard finds that SQL Server has consumed all of available memory. So Richard wants to add more memory resources without interrupting the service to the application. So this is an online SQL Server. We're going to go ahead and add memory while it's online to go ahead and reduce some of the load that's apparent on it. In this case, we're going to be utilizing Windows PowerShell. So it has us opening the PowerShell ISE. And the PowerShell ISE is an integrated scripting environment, so we're not just looking at a command line. We have the ability to write scripts as well and try and execute those via the command line. In this case, it has us just using the command window right now, so we're going to go ahead and import a module that will allow us to make changes within the virtual machine manager environment. So there's the ability through PowerShell to interface with different System Center technologies, one of them being Virtual Machine Manager. But in order to do so, we're going to need to bring that capability into Virtual Machine Manager. So it has us doing an import module. And the really nice thing about working within this ISE is we just saw that auto text come up for us, IntelliSense, which is really nice to be able to have. Virtual Machine Manager. So by doing that, we get no return, but it essentially just brought in a bunch of commands that we can use with Virtual Machine Manager. So we're going to take a look for a sales app machine. So we're going to run a command called get. A lot of the commands you'll see in PowerShell are get commands, set commands, add commands, remove commands. It's very it seems like a very English-based command language. So in terms of the various commandlets that are available, they're usually pretty easy to understand just from their name, but they're also well documented. Let's take a look for get sc, and it has us looking for get sc virtual. And if we go down, we see get sc virtual machine. We need to give it a parameter, which is going to be name. And our name is sales app 101.contoso.com. And we're going to use a pipe command. Pipe will actually send this get command into another command where we're going to run a select object to find the dynamic memory maximum that is currently set for that machine. So let's go ahead and type that in. And it's going to go ahead and pull into that machine. And we can see the dynamic memory maximum is currently set to 1280, so just over a gig that's been allocated to this machine right now. We want to go ahead and increase that. So let's see what options are available to us. We're going to go ahead and take a look at SQL Management Studio, and we're going to connect into that SQL server. While we're waiting for that, I see Jason, you just put a comment in the chat that you're having issues getting kicked out of the presentation. I'm sorry about that. You should not have to keep the window necessarily active. It should be presenting while you're available. Do you have the link client installed on your machine, or are you trying to connect in through the web client? Understood. Okay, using the web client, are you using Internet Explorer as well? Yes, please try going on Internet Explorer. You might get a better experience there. We're going to go and connect into Sales App 101. So we're connecting into the SQL database instance. I'm going to take a look at how much memory has been assigned to our SQL instance. So if we go to our instance, take a look at properties, we take a look at our memory section, we can see, oh wow, its minimum is 0, so it's does not necessarily reserved any memory in our environment, but it can consume really as much memory as we're willing to give it. So that's usually a tuning part of SQL Server that we want to take a look at in most environments is setting some type of minimum and at the very least a maximum. Otherwise, this SQL instance is going to try and consume all available resources if needed. And that can even include memory that's needed for the operating system. So that can cause, ultimate slowness regardless of, what's being processed within SQL. So let's see what we can do about that. In this instance, they're having us continue just taking note of that. And we're going to put some load on the machine. So let's cancel out of here for now. And we're going to open up Internet Explorer pointing to our Sales app again. It looks like in this case they're looking to keep that dynamic capability so it can grow as needed, but we're going to go ahead and put a load and see where that brings us to. So if we go and apply our SQL load, and it wants us to change our RAM load to 90%. This essentially is emulating the high SQL load on our application. If we go back to our PowerShell window, we're going to run a similar command, but we're going to run, instead of a get, we're going to run a set. So in this case, we're going to set on that virtual machine. And it's got a different parameter. In this case, it's going to be set SC virtual machine, and we're affecting the VM property. We're not selecting anything in this case, we're setting it. So we are setting the dynamic memory maximum. And they want us to set it to 4 gigs or 4096. And we see some output there. It has us running another command, which essentially was just the previous command to go ahead and get that information. And we see now our dynamic memory maximum has been set to 4096. This is really useful if you're looking to set memory maximums across the board. You don't want to go into each machine and going through the console and through the GUI. We see that really with any type of operation where we have to set it across multiple machines, and it's something we could affect programmatically. PowerShell is usually the best place to look for that. So it has us going back to the SQL Management Studio and taking a look at our properties. And we can see that the amount of memory that's been allocated, it's no longer at the max for the machine. We've upgraded and allowed the ability for the machine to go up to 4096. It's now consuming 1934, and the dynamic memory is only going to go up to the required maximum that we just set. So the maximum that this instance could take would be 4096. Personally, the way I handle this is I like to set a maximum here that's a little bit lower than the amount that I have on my virtual machine or my physical box in that case. Usually 50 to 80% of the memory at a maximum, I'll go ahead and dedicate to SQL. That way I know SQL's got plenty of memory, but it won't negatively affect the rest of my computing instance. But in this case, having it to be dynamic was also worthwhile because it let us know that the amount of memory that we were presenting to it was not sufficient. So let's go and turn off our loads. So Richard's added extra memory. That performance increase we just did without any downtime. So Hyper-V provides the ability to add additional memory while a virtual machine is running. In this story, Richard used the dynamic capabilities of Server 2012 and SQL 2012 to accommodate the needs of his app. So that is it for Experience 1. We've got about 30 minutes still remaining, so we're going to continue on through some of these sessions. I'm going to take a look right now, given those 30 minutes, at our list to see which ones make the most sense to continue with. So if you bear with me for just a moment. Looks like just hopping right into Experience 2 for infrastructure management should be really useful and worthwhile. Taking a look at the private cloud, building our processes for efficiency, um, and really getting into self-service. So let's take a look at starting with Experience 2A. So this mentions as we transform our data center, we can gain operational efficiencies through the use of self-service and automation. Who doesn't like that? Making the computers do our work for us, providing self-service to our end users, and hopefully providing that in um, a decent manner that they're going to get everything that they need, reduces the amount of work really that's plaguing our IT administrators. We're constantly seeing organizations fighting the battle of really just fighting fires each day just to keep things maintained. We want to build as much into our systems to really maintain themselves, and that allows us to be more resourceful and innovative with other projects. So, you know, after a while, people start getting tired of fighting the fires. It becomes kind of mundane, and they really want to focus on how can they innovate or bring in new and great solutions to the environment. So, providing self-service and automation are two great ways to handle that because it takes burden really off of the IT administrator. But by automating some of these self-service requests, we ensure that the requests are really fulfilled with the control that we're looking to achieve. So in these examples, we are told we will see some items from Server 2012, including storage, virtualization, and networking. And from System Center 2012, some of the products, Service Manager, Orchestrator, App Controller, and again, Virtual Machine Manager. So three of those products or components right there are brand new that we haven't gotten into yet. So in this case, we're looking at self-service in terms of App Controller. So I've actually deployed this for some of our customers in the past, utilizing as a web interface again for their development team. They wanted to spin up a couple Hyper-V servers and say, all right, they have access to these three servers, this much memory, this much disk, this much CPU. Build as many virtual machines as you can on these hosts. We don't want to be burdened with the actual deployment of those OSs. So utilizing something like App Controller provided that web interface that their development team could just reach out to and say, all right, I don't have to go to the IT team anymore. They've given me resources I can go and consume. I can spin things up, spin things down. You're not having your developers reaching out to, Windows Azure or another third-party offering to go ahead and quickly spin up a virtual machine, because I've seen that in the past as well. I've seen somebody spin up a competing product, a competing cloud provider, and I questioned him. I said, "Well, why are you spinning this up here?" And it was, "Well, because I can get a virtual machine up here in 5 minutes. I wait 2 weeks for IT to get that back to me." So those are really the transformations that we're looking to make within our data center to provide those capabilities to our business users, to our developers, who are really our customers. As IT administrators. So in this case, it has us taking a look at the App Controller web console. So let's go ahead and launch it. And this interface is nice except for that piece that keeps blocking me, but that's all right. We can continue to work around that. We can enable single sign-on, so if you're signed in with domain credentials, it'll just bring you right into App Controller as an interface, but in this case, we're going to go ahead and log in. It's got us logging in with a new user account, so just bear with me for a moment. I need to pull that up from the TDI instructions because they've got a different password for that user. All right, so let's try logging in. And App Controller really is a great connection between public clouds and private clouds. So if you've got a private cloud in your environment, you can deploy machines to that private cloud. You can move machines from your private cloud to the public cloud. I generally look at the public cloud as an extension of your data center. There are, in some cases, some workloads that you may be able to move up fully to the public cloud, but I generally see it as an extension. I like having some of my infrastructure still in-house, but where possible, or maybe, it may be more cost advantageous to go ahead and deploy in that public cloud because I'm able to spin up that many more machines that much faster without deploying resources internally. There's a lot of great benefits to being able to stretch between both your internal private cloud and a public cloud. App Controller is really going to be one of the great interfaces that's going to allow us to do that. So if we look at our interface and we take a look at clouds, we can see we have two clouds listed. We have one that's listed Fabricam and one Windows Azure cloud. Has us looking to show our items as cards. We're not connected into Windows Azure right now, and we don't have any services running on our internal cloud right now. But from here, we can see what has been dedicated to this. So how many virtual machines can we build? How many processors? How much storage? How much memory is available? Let's go ahead and get our self-service portal open. Our self-service portal is part of our service manager offering. And we can see it's a little got some personalization going on here. So we've got a logo, we've got some color schemes. The self-service portal is based off of SharePoint, so if you have SharePoint experience or even some basic HTML, CSS experience, this site can be pretty easily customized to really be shown as a portal branded by your company. From here, we can provide knowledge bases. So if you're looking for help, here's some knowledge articles you should take a look at first before you go calling the support desk. We may have some articles online. We have the ability to provide requests as well. So if we have a request for assistance or a request for a service, we have those capabilities built into the service portal. So it's telling us through our service portal to make a request for cloud resources. So we're going to go into our Cloud Resources tab, and we're going to create a request for our own private cloud. It's going to bring us on to a request form, and we need to populate some of these required fields for defining our maximum capacities of our private cloud. Before we actually go to the request, it will prompt us and say, hey, here's some help articles, here's some other service offerings you may be interested in. In this case, we're just interested in the actual creation of the cloud. So we're going to create a cloud called mycloud001. You can name it anything you like. Let's see, it's asking us to give 32 gigs of memory, 512 gigs of storage, and the ability for 8 VMs. We get a review page where we can take a look at this information, and we'll submit. And we'll get a confirmation. We have a request ID that we can refer to for a service request. When it was open, it's going to tell us it may take a few moments, but if we go to view my request, we can see that we have one that is just created and is new, and it's currently pending. So our user, our developer, or app owner, Luis, has been able to make a request for resources with less time, not having to go through tedious emails. Can I get this resource? When do you need it by, etc. We could have placed some notes within here as well and update a request for end users. So now that the request has been submitted, it's going to need to go through an approval process, and the fulfillment will occur actually automatically. So in our next scenario, we're going to take a look at reviewing the runbooks that are associated with the automated fulfillment process. And just given a time check, this might be one of the last scenarios that we get a chance to look at, because we do want to leave some time for wrapping things up and for any questions. All right, so the request that Luis made is actually going to be automated by an orchestrator runbook. So orchestrator is another component, ties in with Service Manager to handle some of our requests. So let's go ahead and open up what's called the Runbook Designer. It's another console that brings us into Orchestrator. And we can go ahead from our Orchestrator server and expand runbooks. We can organize our runbooks into folders, which they've done right here. So it's having us expand one of these folders, and it will take a few seconds to open. Both Orchestrator and Service Manager are really great products. They are both also pretty heavy on the uh, resource requirements. So if we're seeing any slowness here, it's not indicative of really the product in an actual production implementation. They do, in some of these cases, require a good amount of horsepower, but it's worth it with the benefits that we receive. So if we see we've got some runbooks, we're going to take a look at one right here called Increase Private Cloud Capacity. And we're going to take a look at the Get Service Request activity. This is an activity that was brought in via an integration with an integration pack for Service Manager. So we can see Orchestrator has some built-in activities, the ability to process files, so copying files, moving files, deleting files, etc. Some basic monitoring capabilities, the ability to either run on demand or on a schedule, and some system activities, so like running commands. The way I like to think of Orchestrator is, it's the glue between all the various System Center components, but it's also really useful for really any automated activity in your environment that has some way to programmatically impact. So if it's got an API and you can interact with it, can you connect to it via an SSH command? Can you connect to it via command line? We can then go ahead and customize and plug in our links to say, you know, if this completes, move on to the next step. We can have contingency plans based off of failures and email off of those. This can get really complex and amazing in terms of the ability for automating things in your environment. In this case, it's having us look at one of these activities, which is not built in, but it's something that's included because in this case, they brought in the Service Manager integration pack, which added Service Manager related activities. And it wants us to double click, which will just give us the properties. And in our filters list, we can see it's got a GUID matched right now. So this object GUID is a universal ID that was hard-coded in this step. We want to make it a variable where it's going to pull data from a previous step. So right now it's just a hard-coded value. We want it to be able to be smart and look at data from previous steps based off of the runbook activities. So in our value field, we're going to go ahead and just Control A and remove everything out of there. And if we right click in our value field, we should be able to go to subscribe publish data. And if we are publishing data along with our runbook, we should be able to go to a previous step and go ahead and pull information from that data. So let's scroll down on our steps right here. We're looking for the related object GUID. So instead of selecting or hard coding a GUID in, we're going to get that from one of our steps where it detects dynamically. So we're plugging in a variable essentially there. And it's going to ask us, do you want to check this runbook out? So we can only have one editor at a time of a runbook. If you haven't checked it out when you make a change and you go to say OK, it'll say, are you sure you want to check this out? If we say yes, that'll make it checked out. Our change is currently applied. We can undo our checkout or we can check it back in, which will save and check the runbook back in so that others can go ahead and make changes to the system. So let's go. We've got maybe another minute. Let's go through this last one, and this will be our last scenario for today. So Luis received an email from the self-service portal automatically that his request had been approved and completed. He's going to log back into App Controller and ensure that the available resource has been added, and then he can request them for use in for his needs. So we can see without even refreshing, the MyCloud is there. It's got our 8 VMs, unlimited processors. Processors are 512 of storage, and really our large amount, 32 gigs available of memory. So, Christine, I think given our time, we're about 10 minutes to our end time. I don't know if there's other pieces that you'd like to handle as far as wrap up. As those that are on the phone can see, there's still a lot more that we can go deep into in terms of um, this type of TDI presentation. Getting this all accomplished in an hour and a half is a little bit rushed, but we can see going through some of the various additional experiences. If we maybe move on to experience 3, we see we get further into or even from our story B, we get further into Windows Azure networking, further into runbooks and automating our processes, taking a look into Operations Manager and our integrations with development, and our ability to monitor websites. There's many, many more capabilities to look into. I think, if you guys are interested, hopefully this has been a worthwhile, afternoon session. I thank you very much for all your time today. And hopefully, this is getting you excited for the various products that are available from Microsoft. And if you'd like more information on, additional TDI experiences or, additional demos customized to your particular needs for your environment, we're happy to discuss, how we can assist further.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ralph. That about wraps it up. I'm going to stop the recording at this point.